Dude, oh my god. I think it's safe to say that there's a couple of really big issues right now with the game that are ruining the experience for not just me, but a lot of players. My YouTube comments are filled with this, with cards that just don't feel great. Also on Twitter, I asked what people just don't like about the game right now. So let's look at it today in this video. All the things that I think are wrong with the game. This could be cards, fundamental issues, and how I would solve them. Now the first thing, and this is a major thing that I see everywhere, is buddies. It's no secret, but buddies have been kind of toxic. There we go. That's how you play Mutinous, ladies and gentlemen. They are fun at first, but they definitely overstate their welcome. And it's not just because buddies are unfun, but the concept brings a lot of gameplay that is not very just interactive. It's just such a big switch from what we used to have before. I'm gonna bring up some replies from other creators and people that literally play this game for a living. Like Bofer, who mentioned, buddies is a great idea, fun for a bit, but it's super one-dimensional in practical application. Too many give immediate direction, which shortens the mid-game, which is true. There's so many cards that from turn 1 on, you kind of just know what the game looks like. You kind of know what you have to play towards, and you just play for your buddy. Where other players are searching for direction, it's often clear what 6 to 8 of the heroes are doing by turn 1 of each game. So buddies just made everything too streamlined, everything too boring. Like, decisions matter quite a bit less. Anyway, I think we can just keep shitting on buddies. I don't want to make this entire video about it because I feel like I've talked about it a lot, and I feel like everyone has like come together as a community to just say, buddies, they're fine to leave now. And now some cards that should be looked at and how I would change them. Now, important note, when cards are too strong or too weak, the first thought that people get, and what happens most of the time, is to switch around the numbers. Make it a different tier higher or lower, make the attack or the health higher or lower, you reduce the effects. Like, it's always just a number change. It's always just a change of like, let's boost this win rate or lower this win rate, but very often this either kills the card or it's still just really good. Look at Sefin.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine.
Look at so many other cards that bounce around from tier 6 and 5. What I would like to see more of is actual design change. Like, not just moving the tier around, but actually trying to rework the card that it still actually makes the game healthier. Like, very often the issue isn't that it's on a higher or lower tier. Sometimes it is though. Sometimes you can just move stuff around, but very often the issue is the design is just non-interactive, is toxic, or it's just too strong or good, and you can't really just justify making these stats slightly worse. Yeah, the poison comps are coming from my ass. Alright, with that out of the way, first of all, Prestor's Pyrospawn. This card is the most hated card, I think, in the history. Actually, that's quite a hot take. You know what? I'm gonna stick with it. It's probably one of the most hated cards in the history of Hearthstone because it's incredibly oppressive. It's super hard to play around. Like, the main ways you can play around it is maybe a zap, but that can be played around if the card is buffed, or just having like a small taunt like a Void Lord, so that way their attacks with the Prestor might not get amazing value. But the main reason why Prestor is so good is also Amalgadons. It allows Amalgadons to just ignore shields, divine shield taunts, other Amalgadons, and then just kill them off. It is so stupid. Also, just with dragons, they have massive skilling already and can get divine shields on everything with Nadina. Giving them that Prestor is just, that's kind of bullshit. What the fuck is this board? But also, I can't beat this. Like, this is Golden Kaligas, Nadina, 3 Amalgadons, Prestor. Like, this is the god comp. So people have just been complaining about this card for so long for a good reason. So either just remove it. I think no one would care if the card is suddenly gone out of the game. Like, we already have Divine Shield counters. It's not like we need this. We have Ghoul. We can play bumpers like a Selfless First to bump a Divine Shield. We can play a Tiny Cleave to remove shields. Like, there's ways to try and counter a Divine Shield comp. So another way that you could maybe look at nerfing Prestor that I came up with is maybe if it only works on itself. So if the card itself only has the Prestor effect, meaning if Prestor attacks, it deals 3 damage to the target first and then attacks in. It doesn't apply to other dragons on your board. So this way, the card is still interesting. I think it would still be seeing some play in like a big Kaligas board. If you have double Kali and you're scaling up dragons, this is a good dragon to have. It's still gonna bump a shield and trade pretty well, but it's not gonna turn every other dragon and Amalgadon into something that just ignores shields. What the fuck is this board? So I think it will still be an interesting card. It's not gonna be an auto pick anymore, but you know, could still see some play. Moving on to Sefin, another card that they recently got nerfed, but it's still just as good, or not just as good, it's just good. And this is because you need to change the design. I again don't think moving it to a higher tier or nerfing it to Avenge 4 like does make a big impact, it's either still gonna see play or it's just gonna be unplayably weak. I think it's really hard to find an in-between there. You could just go back to Toxfin. I think Toxfin was a better design because the main issue with Sefin is you can slap it on a board and give your entire board poison. I think I'm more than strong enough, right? Less poison. And less fucking poison! I could have killed one of the Murlocs. Oh my god. With Toxfin, you have to find it multiple times. Maybe you make Toxfin a tier 5 card so it's less in the pool. I've also seen people just want to try and rework poison. Like that it deals a certain amount of damage or that it brings things to 1 HP or like just reworking the concept of poison, which I'll talk about in a little bit. I don't think that necessarily solves this because I think poison isn't a necessary mechanic in the game. But you could also just make the poison not permanent. I think this would be kind of a clean solution to Sefin if the avenge poison that it gives to other cards is only for the combat. So that way you have to play an avenge board. You have to try and make yourself weaker and position properly to maybe get 1 or 2 poisons on your board. So Sefin, either remove it, but you need another poison in place because you can't just get rid of all poison. That is no way to balance the game. Or yeah, just do any of the million suggested reworks. And poison, why it's so necessary is that, you know, otherwise it's just going to be a stat game and whoever Highrolls the scaling early wins. The Galliwix just wins if they hit a Nomi. Like you need poison to not have just a stat fight. Things will go out of control really quickly. But poison should be what it's intended to be, which is a tech card. It should be there to try and counter big stats, not be a free transition. Like literally you can find a Sefin and transition your entire board, which could be whatever, into a poison board with 1 fucking card. You can go in, like, that should not be possible. Triple into Sefin. So we already have poison that's gonna counter me. I think poison should be a tech solution. It should be situational. If you see your opponent has a big dude that you can't deal with, then like Spore I think is a perfect example. You just play a Spore, position it properly. Spore can be countered with like Ghoul, so you have to try and jam it up somehow. I think Maxna was also fine, but Maxna was too good with the Reborn, especially with Khadgar and with the buddy from Lich King. So maybe just get rid of the Reborn. Another way that you could solve Maxna is give it Battle Cry, gain Poisonous, so that way if it resummons with Reborn, it doesn't resummon with the poison. I think removing Maxna was not the correct solution there, because now all of the pressure falls onto Sefin and makes it an even more important card. But yeah, just the fact that it can do a full board swap, it can be a comp, like you can just go poison comp now if you find it. It should be what's it intended to be. Poison is meant to tack around your opponents and play around certain things. That's the bottom line there. That's where I'm gonna draw the end of this argument. I think I rambled on long enough about Sefin and poison. Of course, I think every player I've seen so far has a Sefin, including myself. Another thing is just reworking the Murloc tribe in general. Murlocs is super strong right now, which of course leads to all the poison. But the main reason is that Murlocs just scale out of control more than any other tribe. And that's because of Brann doubling the battle cries, and then you have Lookouts that generate you so much more value. Tads, which is a new Murloc on tier 2 that gives you another Murloc. Like that card is actually kind of stupid. It's so good. But the major issues is that this tribe has full poison, but this is also the tribe with the most amount of stats, and that's just not a good combo to have. It also leads to APM issues, like players have to go super fast, and this is just an unfair advantage again for like people with slower computers or who are playing on mobile. This is a mobile game, and sometimes like even on PC you can't get all your actions done when playing Murlocs. I'm gonna bring up Nija's reply here, which is design that creates high APM turns. Apart from the fact that they create significant lag, a problem that has not been solved for years now, they make the game stressful, but mobile players at a disadvantage and are bad for accessibility. I completely agree. It's high APM for a strategy game like this has been increasing and increasing, and like increasing the barrier of entry as well for people that are newer or that don't have the APM or can't physically get all of your actions in a turn. And the lag, dude, oh my god, the lag that it brings with it as well is insane. It has been going on for so long where there's like stutters or lag spikes, and people have to literally, that's why disconnecting was a thing, not just to save time because of the APM issues, like you disconnect to save time and skip your combat, but also to just fix the lag. You have to disconnect after a couple of games or lag starts building up. That is something that I don't know where to begin. Somehow make the lag disappear, because this game has been out for so long. It has an esports. There's so many people playing. It's surreal that we still have to restart our game even when streaming after like 1 or 2 hours. Seafood Slinger. What the fuck? Why is Seafood Slinger still a thing? It's the main reason that leads to boards full of Amalgadons. Like there's only 7 Amalgadons in the pool, but the fact that you can golden so many on your board or in the shop means you can have multiple copies, and then you end up with bullshit boards like this where just the end game is just all Amalgadons. And then you have golden lookouts at Brann and more APM and insane stats. Seafood Slinger just design-wise leads to the insane high roll in the endgame that we have now in Murloc lobbies. So I would just remove the card. I really don't see how to fix it. Like, make Murloc golden on your board, not in the shop, but then it becomes pretty bad. Just no. Also, like, if you golden something in the shop and you play it, you discover another 6-drop, you can discover an Amalgadon or another Seafood Slinger and just keep chaining. It's absolutely disgusting. Quick reminder that if you're enjoying the video so far, to leave the like. It takes 1 second. It's down there and it helps me out a lot. And if you're new here, you can also subscribe if you want to. No pressure. Another card that I would like to see changed is Trickster. I like Trickster a lot. I think the effect is really cool, especially with like Taragosa comps, and I think it's an interesting demon, but it should be a higher tier. This is one of the cases where I think moving something to a higher tier is probably better, because the effect, I don't see how you change it without killing the card. It's too accessible in tier 1. A lot of people and heroes stay down on tier 1 to try and triple a 1-drop. This is one of the best triples to hit early on. It doesn't even lose you tempo, and with Ref Reaver you want to pick up this demon anyway. Like, it's just too good, too easy to triple, and too powerful of an effect, especially in a no Murloc lobby where there's like no poison accessible except for Amalgadons or Spore. So maybe make this a tier 2 or tier 3 card. The effect is too impactful for it to be easily trippable. That's a word, right? Trippable on tier 1. And now the card that is probably the biggest offender of all, Amalgadon. And I also have the hottest take for Amalgadon. But bear with me, please let me explain before you go all keyboard warrior on me in the comment section. Amalgadon is a fine card. It is the underlying issues that make it oppressive. I'm gonna give another example. Brann is a fine card. Even though right now it's completely bullshit, Brann is busted. Brann is an okay card and I think it's fine to stay. But here's how you can look at it. If you compare it to older metas, like previously Brann was bad. Like, there was literally a time where you wouldn't even triple a Brann because you would die. It's too slow. There's no grade value for it. Murlocs isn't good. Same with Amalgadon. Like, it was a nice endgame card that wasn't often the correct pick because it was so slow. You need scaling early on, and endgames wouldn't have that many Amalgadons on the board because you didn't get there. It's just the way that things have been shifting leads to Amalgadons and Brann being super good, but they're not the offenders. And this is gonna lead into my next point, which is the fundamentals and how to actually fix this. The fundamentals of the game are probably the most important thing to me that is gonna have the biggest impact on the overall health of how Battlegrounds is played. First of all, fixing the underlying issues that cause the problems will do everything that you ever needed to do, because if you just address problems, they're gonna keep reappearing in different forms. For example, if you get rid of Amalgadon or nerf it to the ground, kill Brann, remove Sefin, then, you know, all these issues and these problematic cards are gone. But trust me, within 1 or 2 weeks, people are going to be complaining about different cards in the endgame that win everything. Everyone is going to be like, oh, this hero or like double mackerel is too stupid. There's always going to be something in the endgame that's super optimized that is going to be an issue. That's a fact. And if it's not these cards, it'll be different cards. So fixing what causes this endgame or causes all of these issues is going to solve a lot of problems. I'm gonna give you an analogy that I thought of, so stick with me. It's like planting a tree and a tree grows and it does well, but then you see it starting to like decay and die. So you try and water it, or you try and do different things to it, or you try and plant different kind of plants and trees in the soil, but they all start dying over time. And then what you can do is just kill the tree, plant a new one, and then, or do these temporary fixes, but the same issue keeps happening. And it means because the issue is not the tree or the plants that you're putting there or the things you're doing to it, that maybe is like a short-term solution again, but the soil that you're planting it into, the ground. Like, maybe the ground isn't good anymore, so maybe replace the soil, plant them in a different location, or make sure that the environment for the tree is right. Does that make sense? And then that way you can plant whatever the hell you want and it's gonna be healthier. It's like, fix the soil, fix where the roots of the problem are, the roots of the tree. And then I hope that this made some sense. And here is what the soil of Battlegrounds is and what causes all of these cards to be suddenly toxic while that wasn't the case before. I think it's a combination of damage cap and armor now being back in the game. Games get way more high rolly because, as you will see right now, the average games last longer. And that is because you can only take like 15 damage max until someone dies, meaning you can do this greedy, insane turns where you just level, whole triple, stuff like that. Also, buddy spikes allow you to do some crazy stuff. Games just become way more high rolly, and armor also prolongs games. If there's armor, means heroes have more health, means they stay alive longer. And the longer games get, the more optimized they are. You can get to higher tiers quicker. You have longer to set up a good board, find a Brann. You're not gonna die taking a Brann anymore because you have more time to stabilize. There's less pressure. And of course, there's the cards like Seafood Slinger, Murlocs being really strong, so Lookouts and Tads and stuff like that help with discovering more Amalgadons. There's all these underlying reasons why Amalgadon is super good and why Brann is super good right now, and just killing those because they are toxic and removing what is going to cause more problems in the future anyway, even if you would take out Amalgadon and Brann. That's, I think, the way. How you could do that is maybe damage cap only works once. Only once you can take 15, and after that you will start, you know, taking normal damage. Maybe damage cap goes to 20 damage. Maybe you get like a single ice block as long as you're over 20 HP, so at least you can't get one shot if you're relatively healthy. There's a lot of ways that you can look at this. I think Triple KO's tweet is also a good one. So he replies with one of his solutions where like the max damage increases as you level up, but he ends with also if you have a damage cap of 15 and lobby starts with a ghost, the damage cap should still be 15. Yeah, why is damage cap lifted if you have a disconnect at the start? Like, that makes no sense. Suddenly the lobby is gonna play completely differently. And armor also is kind of like a lazy excuse to balance heroes. So again, instead of just changing the hero fundamentally how it works and the hero power, don't just slap armor on it. Sometimes it works, like Cat with armor is a lot better. Some heroes with armor, sure. But giving a hero like Pyramid or Queen Whack-Toggle armor when they have an unplayable hero bar pretty much, and Buddy, that's that doesn't solve anything. No one's still gonna pick the hero. Anyway, sorry that this video is going so long, but I'm really passionate about this and I hope you're enjoying it as well. Now, I want to bring up Regis's tweet because he also replied with something really interesting that really got my brain spinning. She replied that it's complexity and Amalgadons that are the issue. I think the game might be the best for casual audiences when big, simple numbers bash into each other with more reasonable scaling. Effects at a level of mastery that's rewarding at the top end, but maybe intimidating at the low end. I wonder if skill expression could happen through efficiency and economy enough to satisfy the top end without adding too many effects for the low end. By effects, I mean buddies first and foremost, but perhaps Avenge, Poison, Cortex too. That kind of unlocked something in my brain, and that is that, yeah, there's like constantly these new people that don't want to join the game anymore or learn about it, and there's this constant new heroes being added and new effects and new tribes. Like, we're gonna get another new tribe soon, Nagas, and then it's like even more cards that you need to memorize, even more effects. It becomes too much, and especially buddies on top of that. It's intimidating for new players, and it's a lot of options or a lot of things to master for experienced players. But here's the solution, I think, to satisfy both. I think if you try and simplify the basics of the game, so just having big numbers bash into each other, I think doesn't work because that gets really boring. You need effects, of course, because without effects, there's no interaction really. So I do think you want like Divine Shields and Poison and maybe Avenge. But limit it, like rotate stuff out, maybe have like seasons where things are removed, so that way there's like less special things that new players need to focus on. Make things again simpler like it used to be, more casual, but put all of the skill into the decision making. So how you spend your gold, when you level should be really important, how you transition, how to counter. So all of these high level plays that are not necessarily dependent on like all these keywords and all these different heroes and all these things that you need to memorize, but instead of this whole collection of effects that you need to master, it would be really cool to just put all of it into the important decision making and let that define what a good player is compared to a bad one, and put all the skill there, because I think there is a lot there. I've seen top players get 7th, 8th place because they face Highrolls and their decisions didn't matter that much. And that's like, okay, but so how did the top end get rewarded for getting all of these new special effects into the game? Like, what is there for them to learn or to adapt to? But if it's more about like the positioning, about how do I transition from this board into that to maybe counter this opponent that's playing that, like all of these things are high skill and don't need like 10 different minion types and 100 different heroes. I also want to bring up GKRX's tweet. He also left a lot of good feedback, also an amazing player himself. There's too many heroes, it makes balance a nightmare, and heroes select the sides games. Fewer heroes would allow for more interesting heroes to exist without messing up balance. Not just removing the worst heroes, but some of the best too. And yeah, design space is something we haven't even talked about, but I tried designing like my own different Naga tribe earlier in the previous video, and it turns out there's so many ideas I had that doesn't work. Even a lot of the ideas that I showed don't work because of some card that's still in the game or some hero that is there that's gonna break it. There's so many great ideas that can't be put into the game just because there's this one interaction that kind of breaks it. Like Pogos were, I think, fine. They were a pretty bad card on tier 2. It was like high risk, high reward. It was maybe only playable with like Brann or Shudderwock, old Shudderwock I mean then. But Jandis was the only abuser. Jandis was the hero that just broke Pogos, and instead of reworking Jandis, because she was still a problem later on. With tokens, she still got multiple triples. Jandis has always been this hero that needed to be looked at. No, instead they took out Pogo because the card was only broken in that interaction and abusable, and Jandis stayed in the game and has caused multiple more problems. Again, it's kind of like the root of the problem, fixing that instead of the problem itself, because it's just going to reappear in a different form. So taking stuff out. Now the only issue is that they're selling skins for heroes, so now, you know, all of the heroes kind of have a skin that people bought. They can't take out the hero because otherwise people lost their money. So I have no clue how they would fix that, how they could address that issue. Maybe there's a dust system in Hearthstone Battlegrounds, or like a wild Hearthstone Battlegrounds where you can still play with those skins. I don't know, but something has to be done to shrink the pool. It makes it more accessible to new players. There's less initial stuff to learn. The barrier of entry is lower. There's more design space. There's less broken stuff. Like right now, the power level between the weakest hero and the strongest hero is so immensely huge. Like it's insane. And like JK mentioned, sometimes within the hero selection, you already know if you got a top 4 or not, which just feels horrible. Then power creep. Power creep is something that keeps on appearing where things just get stronger and stronger and stronger. The meme is always there of like, this is the card from 2 years ago, this is the card now, which is just a strict, stronger version. And how things, like, it's usually done to keep things interesting, because if you release a weak set or a weak tribe that no one plays, then what's the point? There's no hype, so they always try and one-up themselves. But it means that all the heroes and all the tribes fall off quickly and don't see play anymore, and everything is just about the new stuff. And then you have this dead end of cards that it just exists and make the pool a lot worse. And another interesting reply that I got was by KF. He said, besides everything mentioned, too many dead end comps. Can't remember the last beast comp I got up 2 with besides Nzov. And this was something I didn't think of, but yeah, there's actually a lot of compositions that just cap out and that I never see win games, just because again they couldn't keep up with what is happening. And that's kind of the previous point. They just need to rework that stuff. There should be a couple, like Shaker comp for example. You can still transition into an end game, but that's usually meant as a tempo comp to just get top 3. I'd really love to hear your thoughts down below as well. I really enjoyed the discussion on Twitter that I had and the other comments in previous videos that I saw. Let me know down below. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll catch you in the next upload.